Hey YouTube, it's me, BrandonColonel. The next knife review that I'm going to be doing is on the CRKT M16-02Z. Now, this is a ball bearing pivot system knife, so it is not a spring assist. But with it springing open that lightning fast, most people don't even realize it. And my computer just told me that I'm running low on battery, so wait 1 second. There we go. All fixed. So, as I was saying, ball bearing pivot system opens lightning fast. Sorry. For some reason my voice hasn't been working that well today. But this is one of the only days that I really do get to put up videos. So, overall, it's an Americanized Tanto. The back end is incredibly thick, especially for this size. And it keeps the thickness all the way through until it grinds down to that wicked tip. And this is a pretty sharp tip. You can pierce just about anything with it. And this is what they call a Carson flipper, which, as you can see, there's jimping all the way around it. The Carson flippers have this pretty standard general layout to it. There's a little bit of a cutout right there. It's about this size. It doesn't really work all that well with gloves on. Let me see if I can find my gloves over here real quick. Apparently I misplaced them somewhere, but maybe I'll do it again some other time. But it doesn't really work that well with gloves on, and this was my EDC when I was working in a fast food restaurant, and I even had those light gloves that just go on over your hands that are like the polymer gloves. It's really just light enough so that you don't really notice it's there, but yet they're just really meant to keep the oils on your hands away from the food. That's basically all they're meant for. They tear really easily, but the main point is they're incredibly thin. And even that kind of prevented me from using the flipper on this, because it was just enough extra, and because it's not holding tight to your skin, then it moves all over the place, and your skin can't really get the purchase that it needs on the flipper to be able to work. Now, just simply using pressure, it will come open with gloves on. It'll probably come open to about here or so, maybe a little bit lower, but just a little bit of a wrist flick will actually fix that incredibly easily. But without gloved hands, just barehanded, it comes open literally every time. And all that you need is just like a bit of a light switch technique, and which basically, for the light switch, for those of you that don't know, you're just simply going down on it. Now, to get it to come out with authority, do what they call preloading it, and by putting a lot of pressure on it and push down and in, and then that thing comes open just with massive authority. There is a pretty big bang behind it when it comes open. Now, another thing that I really like about this knife, that it really talked me into buying it when I was initially looking. I was buying it at Smoky Mountain Knife Works in Pigeon Forge, Tennessee. And I was looking at a wide range of CRKT knives, and the reason why this one jumped out at me is because I had quite a few. Now, one of the initial reasons was because I was looking for a Tanto. I specifically wanted the Tanto, because at the time, Tantos just seemed like all the rage to me. They seemed like they would hold up under a lot more abuse, which they're actually not. I actually wasn't completely wrong about that. The Tanto does hold up under a lot more abuse, but it's really a different kind of abuse. Not so much edge retention as it is just overall strength. If I was trying to pry with it, I really could, especially being this thick. This is a really good thick knife that can withstand pretty much prying off a door with it. This thing can withstand just about anything. And but the thing that really got me was this. You can see there's the auto locks, and that auto lock stands for Lake and Walker knife system. Now, basically, what that does is you can see the liner right here. Now, see if I can get in. There's an extra piece of metal right there. You can see how it's keeping the liner from going out of place. I'm actually trying to disengage the lock right now. It won't move out of place. You can see how that's moving now. Basically, that keeps the liner from going out of place at all. Now, you move this thing out of place with the auto locks. Now you can disengage the lock, and it falls free. Now, this thing comes in two different styles. There's locks and auto locks. Auto locks just means that there's now a spring that's inside of this mechanism right here, so it engages automatically. Locks, that you had to put it in place yourself. And I think the CRKT Heiho and Hizatsu, I think both of those knives have regular locks. And whereas the M16 series has the auto locks on it. And this is AUS 6M high carbon steel. There's AUS 6 that's a stainless steel, but this is the high carbon version, and you can tell when it says AUS 6M high carbon steel. And so this thing will rust, so you do have to, especially with me being in Valdosta, then this definitely has, with the climate being so wet and humid at like 90% of the year, then this definitely has shown some rusting spots on it. So, but with just a light coat of oil every so often, about maybe every 2 or 3 days, then I really don't see any more rust spots, and the one that was initially on there actually disappeared. So it took care of it pretty quickly, especially if you're in places like Valdosta and you want to really take care of the rust and keep it away. You want to take this thing apart. And it's a fairly simple design as far as just how it goes together and how it comes apart. Make sure to keep track of where the screws are going, because the screws are all different lengths and sizes, and you want to make sure they go back in the right holes. Because like the screws on this side, for these two screws right here, they're actually longer and go through both of these scales. So they're a lot longer. So make sure that you put them back on this side. The screws on this side are a lot shorter because they only have to go through this scale and the corresponding liner. They don't even go through the backspacer at all. And then obviously the pivot screw is pretty easy to map out where it goes, but these screws right here, again, they only go through it in the scale and the corresponding liner. But they are a little bit longer than the two screws down here for whatever reason. So make sure that you map all the screws, map out where they're going, find some way to keep track of it, because otherwise you will get screwed up and you'll have to start all over and start from scratch, figure out which screws go where. And also, if you decide to take the entire thing apart, liners and all, then be careful with this side, because once you take off, because for one, taking off the liner on this side, that's underneath the scale, it's a pain in the butt, just plain and simple, it's a pain in the butt. But also, once you do get it off, then the auto locks, there's a really tiny piece of metal. It's just like a springy piece of metal. It's not actually a spring, but it's just like a really springy piece of metal that it keeps this thing, make sure that it activates. And it is incredibly tiny. So if you're doing something to take that out, make sure you know where it goes and make sure that you know how it gets in, because honestly, it doesn't want to stay in there. It wants to come free. So make sure that you have some way to keep it in there. Make sure that you know how to take it apart, and just know that it's there, because it will definitely come apart on you incredibly easily, and you'll spend the next 20 minutes looking at it, looking for it on the ground if it comes out when you don't want it to. And if you have carpeting, you might as well just simply buy a new one of these, because you're probably not going to find that spring, because it is incredibly difficult to find it. Because I have wood floors, and it still took me 10 minutes, and I was using a flashlight trying to see the glint of the metal. So it is not an easy piece to find if you lose it. So if you're taking it apart, be prepared for what you're going to find. But as far as the overall design, it is actually pretty simple, and putting it together is the hard part, because and it's all because of the auto locks. The auto locks is a pain in the neck trying to put that stupid thing back together. So my advice: don't take apart the auto locks. The auto locks won't rust. So really, there is absolutely no reason to take it apart. Take off the scale and tape down the auto locks if you need to. Find a way to keep that sucker in there, because you don't want it coming off. And then maybe use like a flathead screwdriver or even the clip to hold the spring in place while you're putting the liner back on. And then once you've got the liner on the pivot, then slide it down as fast as you can. Just find some way to get it on there just as fast as humanly possible, because like I said, it doesn't want to stay in there. Now, just to make sure that you oil down everything once it's taken apart, because like I said, this thing will rust, liners and all. And they tried to make sure that it's a non-wear part, because I think the liners, I think they advertised that it's stainless, but the liners were rusting even worse than the blade was. So the liners are not stainless. So I think they were really going for non-wear parts. So they made the liner and and the blade probably the same steel. So like I said, this is pretty good liner lock. It flips like a dream. Because it's just a ball bearing pivot system, it's not exactly IKBS, so it's not going to just glide back in place. You do have to do something to put it back down. So, and once you've gotten the hang of it, then closing it and opening it one-handed becomes second nature. And as far as the equipment needed, a simple torque screw. I don't exactly know the size bits or anything, but the torque screws is exactly what you need for pretty much just about everything on here. The only thing that's any different is this. You can use a flathead screwdriver, but if you see, that's basically got a lot of texturing on it, which actually is somewhat of a downside, but I'll get into that in a second. But the good reason for this is it makes adjusting it, you can use your thumb, and you can actually completely take this screw out, which I'll do right now. Because this is just to prove that you can use it really easily. And there is a pivot screw. So it just makes it really easy to do field adjustments if you need to. Because this probably wouldn't be the best design for military use. It's about $42, and although it would be a really good design to keep somebody safe. Okay, just gotta check for blade play for a sec. Okay, there we go. Now, although this is a really good tactical design, it comes open every time with like a dream. The fact that you can't really use it with gloved hands all that easily, that's a bit of a downside. Also, being AUS-6M high carbon steel, then it's a really soft steel. So this is it loses its edge fairly quickly. This will keep it for about a month on cardboard and paper, just opening packages, things like that. But definitely, if you were deciding to use this as your survival knife, like throwing it in a bug out bag or something like that, this is definitely not the knife you want to use. Because I decided to use this for whittling at one point just to see how it would hold up, and I cut off a single branch from the stick that I was about to use, and almost instantly that exact spot became dull, and I actually had to sharpen the knife on spot. And so, like I said, it is not a hard use knife. I mean, you could easily use it for prying tasks and incredibly hard use things of that nature. But as far as hard cutting, no, it is definitely not that type of knife. This will lose its edge reasonably quickly. And but if you're just using it on paper, cardboard, different things of that nature, and especially your tactical knife, this is a knife that you do want to go to. The tip is incredibly strong. It's not going anywhere. That could easily go through just about anything you want to try. I mean, I've stabbed this into wood before. The tip didn't go anywhere. The tip didn't even fold. So nothing whatsoever wrong with the tip. I've pierced boxes all day when I didn't want to bend down and grab it, so I just basically stabbed it and brought it up to me. It works phenomenally like that. The tip is very strong. Back end, like I've said many times, it is incredibly thick, so you really don't have to worry about this thing breaking on you at all. The thumb studs really are only acting as the blade stops. I mean, you can get it open with them, but they're so finicky, and it takes so much more work to get it done that even with good practice, they just will not be nearly as quickly as the flipper is. So this is a flipper through and through. No matter how much practice you get, it won't be that effective. The flipper is what it's meant to be. Blade stops, that's what these are. These are not thumb studs. This is solely blade stops. Because in fact, you can't even see you can barely even see the thumb studs at all when you're looking at this thing, because it is flush completely with the handle. When I turn it this way, it completely disappears once it's horizontal. So these are meant to be blade stops through and through, and it is razor sharp. I mean, get a piece of paper. I've got a piece of receipt paper here. Very sharp. Yeah, that receipt paper, it just goes through it, and just glides straight through it, no problems whatsoever. The clip is ambidextrous for tip down only, so and it will come out incredibly easily though, and I can probably have this out and deployed in maybe a second and a half. So this deploys incredibly fast. The pocket tension, it's got a really good pocket clip retention on it, but it is lesser than some knives, so it's not exactly going to tear your pocket up, and but it will still have good pocket retention. Now, I've had this knife for about maybe 2 years, maybe just a little bit more, and it is still holding up excellently. And you can see a little bit where the wear is happening. Like the pocket clip is somewhat showing the signs of wear. This used to be completely black, and you can see how there's scratches everywhere, because, like I said, this was my EDC at work for quite some time, so I was scraping up against things. This pocket clip was scraping in my hand. Just a lot of things going on right next to that pocket clip. As far as the blade goes, you can barely see anything. There's a couple of scratches right there. I don't know if you can completely see them. Let me see if I can get in the light. You can, if you're looking really closely, you can see about 2 minute scratches there. Just a little bit of signs of scratches, like right on the tip. Again, it's not really showing up that well, but yeah, there's just minute scratches everywhere. But this is, some people would call this bead blasted, some people would call this a stonewashed. I haven't exactly looked at like a CRKT website to know definitively what they call it, but I would say this is more of a bead blasted finish, maybe a sand blasted. But some people are calling this a stonewash. There's no scratches in this that are intentional. All the scratches in there I put in myself, which, like I said, owned it for about 2 years, and this thing still looks like I could probably sell it today for just barely under market value price, because it still looks basically brand new. If I replaced that pocket clip, then this thing would actually act just like if you bought it fresh from the factory. So it holds up phenomenally well. Now, for those of you that are buying it and you see all that space in between the liners and the blade, that it doesn't do anything. The reason why there's all that space in the blade is that here, let me see if I can get it right. You see that white part on this side? There's a white thing right there. That's a Teflon washer, and that's what makes it flip so incredibly smoothly. And on the other side is I think it's just like a steel washer. Either that or it's like a phosphor bronze, something making it flip very smoothly. I don't know exactly what it is, but yeah, those 2 washers in there. You can see the Teflon washer here, and maybe like a phosphor bronze washer, steel washer, some kind of metal washer on the other side. Both of those are what's having the blades so far apart from both the liners. But like I said, no blade play in any direction, no front and back. There's no side to side. It is very tight. Blade centering is pretty substantially off. But if you do center it, then you will have massive blade play. Let me center it real quick and show you just how much blade play there is. In the handle, there's quite a bit. It's not terrible for blade play side to side when it's centered, but it is noticeably different. Now, it flips open even faster, and it actually does flip open even faster when it's centered, and it literally just falls in place. And there actually is just you can just shake it down, and it'll somewhat go in, just of its own accord. And I actually wasn't expecting how fast it was going to fall, because I've actually got nicks at my nail now. So it is very sharp. So I actually do prefer it over here right now, because that's just the best way that it works for me. because there's no blade play. I don't want any blade play whatsoever in my knives, and I actually will completely retire a knife if it has blade play that can't be fixed, and it prevents the knife from working properly if I tighten it down to the point where there's no blade play. So now it has no blade play whatsoever. It works just fine, and tightening it down this much does it doesn't scrape against the liner or the locking mechanism at all. This is just a really good solid knife, easy to do field work with it, as like a what's the word? It's not field work. Field repairs. There we go. It is incredibly easy to do field repairs with this. The handle material is patented Zytel. It's basically just the glass reinforced nylon that you see on a lot of knives. It's just CRKT patented this as Zytel. Big whoop. It's the exact same thing. And like I said, the Carson flipper, and it's on a ball bearing pivot system. It just has the Teflon and metal washers, some type of metal. Don't know exactly what it is, but yeah, this thing flips like a dream. And one thing I forgot to mention actually is it does have a fair amount of jimping right here. Now they do work very well. They're not the best, but they do work very well, and it gives you a really good purchase on the knife. And it is pretty thin. And here, let me actually get a ruler out, because I forgot to measure this before the video. Now, the blade length is 3 inches on the dot, so this is right at 3 inches for blade length. The full length is just a little over 7 1/4 inches. So this is about 7 1/4 inches long overall. The closed length is it's just 2 lines over 4 inches, so just a little over 4 inches closed. The pocket clip is not exactly deep carry. Let me get this with my other hand. That's about how much you'll see it coming out of your pocket. So it's not exactly deep carry, but it really does work, and it does ride pretty deep in your pocket. The knife is one sec. The knife is 1/2 an inch thick, so it is pretty thick as far as just thickness goes, but just as far as how slim it is, like this way. Let me measure that at its widest point. It is 3/4 inches at its widest point. Now, with it being only 1/2 an inch thick and 3/4 inches wide, then it doesn't really fill up your hand all that much. It more just slips in, and it really doesn't feel like you're grabbing onto all that much. But just the way that the ergonomics are, it more feels like it's made for your hand. Because I know that may not be all that much of a finger choil, and it's more just housing for the blade stops. But just the way that your first finger fits into that, it's just really comfortable. And then as you fit more fingers on it, it's just even better as you go along. Because you can see that your fingers just really fall into place on this knife. And it is a really good thought out design, and this starts curving just at the right spot. It's not quite as comfortable as my Kershaw Asset. Let me get that out real quick. Got my drawer right underneath my computer right now. Okay. So like I was saying, it's not quite as comfortable as the Kershaw Asset, because just the way that this curve is, it goes right with the curvature of your hand when just how you would grip it. But so it's not quite as comfortable as that, but the forward part of it actually is even more comfortable, because the Asset only has one finger choil. The rest is just one massive choil right here. So this is more comfortable in the back, and this is more comfortable in the front. The only way that this knife would have been any better as far as comfort is if they somehow combine the two of these handles. Have the curvature of the Asset, and then the front part of these. But this is more meant to be a streamlined knife, because it is very straight, just a completely streamlined. When you get to here is when it starts going down to the tip, because the tip is center with the center of the knife, so it goes straight down. So that way, when you're going for a thrust, if you need to use this as a tactical knife, then the tip is really in line and in center. So that way you really don't have to worry about it being off center and you having to make up for that. This is the center of force. So when you go for it, all of the force is really riding on that tip, and it being so strong, it can handle that without a problem. So overall impressions of the knife, very good in hand. It's it has no texture on the Zytel, so it slips a little bit if you're not really grabbing onto the choils at all. But these holes do provide some extra kind of traction if you put your thumb on the side of the blade, and especially this pivot bolt. That'll especially give you massive traction. So if you need to put your thumb on the side of the blade when you're going for a thrust or something like that, then this gives you massive traction. My thumb is not going anywhere. And the jimping on the liner lock, I feel they really could have done without that, because that just gets annoying sometimes. And the steel is really good for a tactical knife, not good as an EDC if you're expecting it to last for a really long time. Now, if you're just using it to open boxes, break down boxes, this is going to be good for you. And tactical knife, like I said, especially good for that. It is ambidextrous, and it does open the same with your left hand. The closing mechanism, that takes a little bit of practice, because for me, I've got to close it against like say this is my leg, I've got to close it like that on my leg, because I just can't do it the same way, because especially if I was trying to close it, because I do it like that with my right. With my left, if I was trying to do the same thing, then it would close on my thumb, and that's just a safety hazard. So instead, like I said, on my leg, I would just do that. So it takes a little bit of a different way to close it left-handed, but it can be done. And as far as the auto locks go, I really do like that. It really ensures that your knife is not going to close on you when you don't want it to. The only downside of the auto locks is that sometimes that gets in your way when you're trying to open it, and your finger scrapes against that. And so if you accidentally do that, then your finger catches and it doesn't allow you to go up all the way, and your blade stops. And even if you go all the way down, but your finger scrapes against that, you still lose momentum, and therefore it doesn't open completely. So you got to make sure to avoid that auto locks when you're opening it, so that way it doesn't slow down your momentum. And so I like the ergonomics. I like how streamlined this is. I like the fact that it's a Tanto I don't care for just how fast this loses its edge, and so if I needed it in a survival situation, I would be really disappointed if this was the only knife that I had. It is incredibly easy to sharpen. All Tantos to me are incredibly easy to sharpen. The only pain is when I'm trying to put it on. I just recently got a new type of sharpener that's. I think I showed it to you guys before. It's basically just a Lansky sharpener, and it works on preset angle rods that you can put in. The only pain is trying to get this edge smooth on that. Now I can still use my bench stone in it really easily, and if I decided to use my whetstone, then again I could get that tip really easily. But the ceramic just works a little bit better. It's finer grit, and it's easier to use in general. But as far as getting that secondary tip right here, then that's just the primary tip. But as far as getting that primary to the secondary tip, just this area right here, then it's just a little bit of a pain because you still hold it like this, where you're trying to hold it at an angle, and then just say this was it. Then you're trying to do just that, and that gets a little awkward at times. And you would think it would be just easier to do it like this, but just to hold like a pen and go through, and that would be easier. But but for one, this flipper just digs into your skin and makes it really uncomfortable. Then if you try to choke up on it and then go down, then you're putting your hand right in contact with that incredibly sharp blade, and that's just not a good idea. So military use possibly, but wouldn't be my first choice. Just an everyday tactical knife, definitely. EDC at work, opening boxes, definitely. Whittling, heck no. Because first cut, this thing is probably going to get dull, because it will not handle up to wood very well at all. So that's my overall impressions of the CRKT M16-02Z. Really good knife, pretty affordable, 42 bucks. Can't really beat it. So any comments that you have, leave them in the comments below. And I would love hearing from you guys. And so that's all I have to say. BrandonColonel out. Stay safe.